Hello, folks, and welcome back to another edition of Money in Motion. Today is Monday, September 5th here, joined with Monte, and very exciting weekend. Don't forget to like and subscribe if you enjoy the content here today. But Monte, anything you looking at here to start this morning that you're thinking about?
Well, first of all, I'd like to address the comment from Joel asking why I'm looking more and more like a Bond villain. Um, that's a good question, but
I'm
actually,
wondering that myself,
interesting
as
story.
is your therapist.
Uh, Shut up. Um, Funny story. Most kids like when you ask them what they want to be when they grow up, they're like, I want to be a doctor, a lawyer, an astronaut. I wrote I wanted to be a supervillain. That was always like my my aspiration is to be like a supervillain. I just love the idea or like the archetype of a supervillain. I think it's cool. Not that I'm an evil person. I don't have the the evil nature to go through with it, but I've always been obsessed with like Doctor Doom and I think every great movie needs a good bad guy for it to be a good movie. And no hero is a true hero without a good villain. So like I always appreciated that. So I'm not going to take it as an insult, Joel. But anyways, enough
That wasn't the backpedaling I expected, but
backpedaling. I'm
let's
I'm I
let's get to
embrace
the markets.
I embrace the super villainy. All right. There's But yeah, let's get to the markets. Starting with Bitcoin. We're dipping down into that range of accumulation that we've been talking about below 26K. This is like the kind of start, really the danger zone here because we're not seeing the same amount of accumulation that we'd seen in the past. You know, Nick had talked about this, how we had, first dip down below, pretty strong supply absorption, next dip down below, really strong supply absorption here, some decent supply absorption. Not seeing much here. It looks like we may head lower. This candle body is still forming. And unless we get a shift in equity markets, which, we've talked about Mondays and the Monday effect and how people, reflect on their life choices over the weekend. They go to church on Sunday and they're like, oh my God, why am I long? Why am I long Apple? What am I doing? It's at a 52-week high. I need to get out of this position. And they sell their stocks. That's normal. Normal ape behavior from us human beings on a Monday. But I think that as long as you have the NASDAQ and the S&P turning down today, don't expect much from Bitcoin. Really the breakdown level is right around 25.5. I think anything below that, you might want to start consider maybe unloading some spot or even perhaps looking to short the altcoins, because I think below this level, we enter into what is some serious risk off territory for crypto. So that's just what I'm looking at today. Now, that being said, if the market does turn around tomorrow, the equity markets, that is, then expect Bitcoin to bounce back above that 26K level. That's what we've been seeing historically. And I think that will ring true if the equity markets bounce back tomorrow. But again, that's another contingency that is something that you'd have to bet on. So
good stuff. Good stuff. Morning, everyone, as well.
yes,
Hope
good
you guys
morning.
are doing good. But yeah, I'll share some stuff.
Yeah, I'd hope so. It's your goddamn job.
Yeah,
What are we
doesn't
looking
feel
at
like
here?
a job. But
You're right.
all right, what are we going to talk about first? So ES and Nasdaq, we actually did see a little bit more selling last week. So I can't really, I'd like to short equities up here, but I can't really, I don't know. I just think it's interesting seeing that retail continued to short as well as large specs, and then commercials bought last week. A little bit different in the NASDAQ, and then in Dow. It's just like we're not getting a lot of confluence in terms of like crowded markets between equities, or even like energies or metals for that matter. Like metals are not really crowded anymore either. So it's kind of a tough place where the market's in right now, going into September. I do think September does have the potential to be a big month. Typically, you'll see that when August is pretty bad. So I would expect a little bit of relief here, but I mean, we'll see. It's difficult to get a lot of edge in positioning because there's just not a lot of crowdedness in like any market for that matter. The ones that I will talk about today are like gold and then the dollar. I guess that's a good place to start because the dollar is still like very bullish, and there's still a lot of shorts within the dollar. So, if you remember this time all throughout the last year where we had this like descending triangle or just bear market in the dollar, this was de-dollarization. Everybody was proclaiming that the dollar was going to be dead. And now it's squeezing. And what's interesting is that we're at levels which, are really not that much historically, in terms of like relative levels. So none of the large specs are even really long. It's just been shorts being forced to cover so far. So if people actually do get long the dollar, we could see new highs in like the next year or two, just based on positioning. But that's not something I would necessarily forecast or look out. But yeah, moving over towards gold. Tough break today. I'll probably close if we have too many more losses. But
Yeah, you want to talk a little bit about how you were positioned as we started this week?
yeah, so I entered on Sunday just because the positioning was still crowded, or yesterday. It's like relative price levels. So if we close today below these levels, I'll probably just exit the trade and take the 60 to 70 basis point loss. But yeah, hindsight, I probably should have hedged with the dollar, but I just didn't. I had like a glitch within my indicator that I had to clean up. I had the data from the 5 year showing as the dollar, so like I thought we were actually a lot more neutral than we were. But
Yeah.
that's fixed now.
Yeah, that would have been a good hedge. I still think it is a good hedge, to be honest. I mean, I think you could still plausibly put that on and get some kind of market neutral returns. But
One thing I did want to share was just like borrow fees in relation to gold. There's an interesting statistic I might want to look more at in the future, but last week we had borrow fees spike above 0.1% or 1%. So essentially people borrowing GLD in order to sell it short. Last time we had really large spikes in the borrow fees was near local lows. Now this doesn't, like COT or these borrow fees, it doesn't have to predict price at all. All it means to me is that like a lot of people are shorting at these levels, so maybe they're right, but also maybe if they're wrong, there'll be one more squeeze higher. I'm getting distracted by comments now. I gotta stay focused.
Yeah, CJ can't read comments and charts and talk at the same time. It just makes his the circuitry in his brain start to overheat. You can see the steam coming out of his ears right now, actually.
It's got 2 inputs. It can only handle 2 to 3 inputs at a time.
It's like an old monitor with only 2 inputs. But I did want to talk about this, CJ. It's actually starting to move now. We were talking about it before the show. Solana.
Is the market this inefficient that it takes 3 hours to react to PayPal news?
Yeah, that's what I'm wondering, because the news hit at 7:12 this morning, right? And we posted it in the Discord. This is some big news. Visa's scaling the USDC settlement pilot program to include Solana blockchain, enabling enterprise-grade throughput at virtually no cost for Visa issuers and merchant acquirers on Solana. So this is like as big of news as you could possibly get for a cryptocurrency like Solana. Visa is a giant when it comes to processing payments, and partnering with Solana, of course, that's massive news. Now, this thing, it didn't start moving. Look at this. This is weird. It didn't start moving until about 30 minutes ago, even though the news is 3 hours old. So the question is, like, do you chase this news, or does this news have stopping power? I want to ask you first, CJ. What do you think about this news? What do you think of the Solana daily chart? Is it worth a shot to the upside here?
Let me look at the Sol daily chart. I mean, yeah, I think so. I mean,
right? That's what I'm thinking too.
you can basically just put the stop at today's low.
Exactly.
I think people have just been really, really bearish too. Like crypto, it's like you could probably feel it within yourself if you're watching this too. Just like with the crypto market, and this is another thing I want to talk about, going back to like the longer term Bitcoin chart. But just like you basically go from the blow off top, whatever that was, midway through August or midway through July, an entire 45 days of just misery right there.
Yeah. Yeah. And, you know, you said that, like, is the market really this inefficient that it takes this long for prices to start moving? Yes. The answer is yes. Yeah, that's true. But also, like, I see this as a massive reflection of where we're at in the market in terms of participation from people. We've been talking about this a lot over like the last few months, CJ. It feels like we're in like a PvP zone where it's the same 1,000 crypto traders all trading against each other, right? And it's like no new money's coming in. And I think this to me is the ultimate sign of that. Under different circumstances, like if we were in a bull market and Bitcoin was, nearing breaking into new all-time highs, we had risk on equity or risk on price action in the crypto markets. This is the sort of move that could move an asset 100%. I'm not saying like 100% chance it could move the asset. I'm saying it could move the asset 100% to the upside, 200% to the upside. Like this is that big of news, but there's just no buyers. There's nobody left in the space. The space is dried up. And because of that, I think if you've stayed through it and you've managed to wade your way through this desert and survive on the little amount of water we have left, this might be a bit of like an oasis here on the horizon. And I think that going long Solana, like CJ said, you got clearly defined risk, a clearly bullish catalyst. The market's reacting a bit late to. Nonetheless, bottom of a downtrend, cut it if it drops below this. I think that's clear as day. Wouldn't use much leverage, if any, because it's going to be a crowded trade because of that news. It seems like the market's waking up to it now. So go ahead and hop on that trade. I'm going to go ahead.
Can we pull some funding rates?
Yeah, of course.
They're probably very green. Let's see. Oh, yeah. The best is when Bitcoin and ETH are both.
Yep, so here's the funding rates. Here's what we're looking at. Yeah, what do you make of this, CJ?
I mean, it's just kind of a reflection of what I was saying earlier, whereas like everybody's bearish. It's 45 days of pain we just went through.
Yeah.
With the exception of like the one day with the grayscale win. But other than that, it's just been pain. So
it's just been pure pain. That's true. But I really do think I do think that this is like going to be a shot that, I don't know. This is just big news. And I feel like it's like, even with the market, like CJ pointed out, this market is so inefficient. And like I pointed out, there's not a whole lot of buying power. There's not a whole lot of capital for these people that are still left in this market to inject into it. So although like Solana has moved a nice amount today, what's it up like 3.2%? I think that this could be the start of a much bigger reversal pattern, and we could plausibly see this thing climb up. That being said, like CJ pointed out, clearly defined risk cut if it drops below this zone here. But if not, I think this thing could easily climb back up to the very least at to this level here around $25, where we hit this swing high and then got rejected before going lower. This was basically on the back of short liquidations getting squeezed out. There aren't any shorts to be squeezed out here. We're going to need spot buying, and I think this news could be catalyst enough to elicit that spot buying. So, full disclosure, I'm about to get long Solana right now on BingX. I think I'm going to just go with 1.8x leverage and just buy at current price, set my stop loss at the daily lows, and shoot for that $25 target. I think it's not out of the realm of possibilities. So gonna go ahead and fire up that trade right now.
All right, we're in the depths of the bear market lows. Despite equities being pretty high up, doesn't mean that it's over, but I do want to lay out some hopium too. Hey, coin going up for once. How about that?
Your baby.
It's looking decent. I mean, we'll see. I'm surprised to see this relative strength with equities just really selling off. I mean, Russell just getting crushed today. I guess it's still early in the week. But yeah, I want to talk about time.
I heard. Look into Bitcoin. Got a facelift.
Yeah, this is one of the best OG sites. I mean, for macro models, really all you need in terms of like macro data for Bitcoin. But these halving events are highlighted with these lines. Each halving event is indicated here. And the optimal time for accumulation after each one of these echo bubbles, I guess we've only really seen one true echo bubble, which is in 2019. But right now we're like right here. We're just like coming down. We've retraced from 32 to 25. We've retraced and are putting in that retest of support following in that cycle. Whereas back in 2016 and 2017 we had already bottomed and we could go higher. So I just if equities manage to continue to hold up and say we have maybe a 5 or 10% pullback, but we continue going higher and make new all-time highs, like these models within Bitcoin I think will hold and will be will remain to be very accurate over time. But where I would compare us to right now, it's like very similar. And if you look in terms of like where we are relative to having, what this looks like on the Bitcoin chart is a little bit different. Let me show you. So, we're basically right here, coming down from the first echo bubble. This is an entire year basically, or, from September to May. It's not quite a year. But 200 days of just really sideways to negative price action. I mean, let's just forget about the fact we had a black swan, but just assumed we would have been in this kind of price channel. We could go another 200 days and still be at 25 to 30K here in Bitcoin. Like that is a very likely possibility just based on the boringness of the space, the lack of developments, the lack of new capital inflows. But that's not bad because it means we have time to accumulate. And if we do have a black swan event or another risk off event, then we'll be able to get things that are, one would call, relative value or like cheap in terms of like relative value. Another one that I like in terms of positioning or just shows how wrecked people are is the net unrealized profit and loss. We haven't got quite to capitulation yet, but if we do go back into this capitulation zone where people are really feeling some pressure and are underwater on their Bitcoin bags, then I'll be looking to buy even more. But we're not really, we're not that far up from FTX lows. Same thing with the fear and greed index. But yeah, what do you think about kind of the macro cycle? Monte, would you say the 4-year cycle Bitcoin halving is still intact?
Yeah, I've never thought it's lost its tact. Even with like the echo bubble thesis and everything, like the stock to flow chart, it's not going to move directly along that line. There's going to be huge variations to the up and to the downside. That's the nature of a highly speculative asset like Bitcoin. It's not going to move up in a, uh, you know, 90 or 45-degree line. It's going to, there's going to be chop. And I still believe in the, stock to flow model. And, you have years following halvings where we see almost no price action. It's just straight up sideways for, like you said, months at a time. And I don't think that that's out of the realm of possibility here. Now, what I will say is that if the NASDAQ and the S&P break in new all-time highs, then perhaps that kicks off Bitcoin's positive price action a bit earlier, especially considering the fact that now we have all these vehicles of exposure to Bitcoin, things like Coinbase, Riot, Mara, Galaxy, Grayscale. I think that with risk on price action in the NASDAQ, that will correlate a lot more to risk on price action in the Bitcoin market as well. So I agree with you. We could plausibly see some long consolidation, but at that same time, if the NASDAQ breaks into new highs, then I wouldn't be surprised to see Bitcoin run a little bit.
Yeah, I know. All of this is kind of a big if because the equity market needs to remain in a neutral. I guess at least the assumption would be. I mean, maybe we could live in a world where Bitcoin decouples, but that seems rather unlikely thus far.
Yeah. But anyways, I think that is about all we got for today. Short week, but should be an interesting one nonetheless. And as always, CJ and I will be hanging out over at tradethechain.com and in the Discord if you'd like to. There's a 14-day free trial at tradethechain.com. Definitely recommend you check that out. Like I said, you get access to the sentiment dashboard as well as a Discord community with myself, CJ, Nick, and a community of traders from all around the world. And also, please don't forget to subscribe and turn on notifications so you don't miss any of our videos. Put out a lot of content, a lot of good stuff. You don't want to miss it. But thank you guys so much for watching. We'll see you again tomorrow at the same time. Have a great day.